Hey guys, so we're back for the second half of chapter 9. Remember last time we left off it was super long, so I decided we have to split that one in half because it was crazy long. And yesterday when we read, where we left off was they were near the palace and they were watching like all the people walk into the ball. Do you remember that? Oh, it's one of, I don't know. If my head goes in a certain place, I can block it. Sorry, I don't know what else to do about it. We'll just have to make do. So, they were going up the giant staircase inside the palace. And then Alex said, Connor, look at this. And I left you at a cliffhanger. Do you remember now? All right. So chapter 9, part 2. She pointed to a silver star placed in the steps under their feet, and it said, "This marks the very place where Cinderella left her glass slipper behind on the night she met Prince Charming." That would be really cool, wouldn't it? It would be so cool to be at. Now, remember our setting of our story and remember the genre, okay? Is this something we could really go visit? It's not realistic, is it? This is a fiction story. It's fake. And it's so fake that it's not really believable. It's more of a, fantasy story. Can you believe that's the very spot Cinderella left her glass slipper? Alex said with both hands pressed against her heart. Absolutely, Connor said. I wouldn't have climbed these steps again if I had left my shoe either. The twins caused quite a scene at their entrance. Everyone was absolutely appalled by their clothing. Alice could feel herself blushing from the way everyone was staring at her. She felt like she was back in school. So based on that, what do you think appalled means? They're appalled. Remember, they wrapped themselves in blankets and kind of made robes out of them. Do you think appalled has a positive connotation or a negative connotation? Yeah, it's negative. Appalled means like disgusted. Do you think that they look that way on purpose? They're making the best of what they have. Are we supposed to judge people by what they're wearing? We should be kind, right? Yeah, that's not a kind thing to do because that's all they have. And Alex feels like she's back at school. Remember how she was treated at school? Yeah, she felt like an outcast, didn't she? I think she described herself as feeling lonely. Max! He's distracting me. Do you hear him? He's scratching at the cabinet door to get more food, even though he's currently eating a plate of food. He takes after his mommy, doesn't he? I love food. You guys know I get hangry, huh? All right, back to the story. One palace guard in particular couldn't stop staring at them, not in a judgmental way, but as if he'd seen them somewhere before and couldn't remember where. He was just a step inside the palace entrance, and he greeted all the guests as they passed him. He wore more badges on his uniform than any other guards, and he had a very thin, dark beard. Another palace guard was collecting invitations from the doors. The twins began to panic. Now he's taking a bath. Diva cat over here. Why are they panicking? There is a guard that is collecting the invitations. Do they have an invitation? I don't think so. Not that we know of, right? What are we going to do? Alex whispered to her brother. Just let me handle this, Connor said. I saw it in a movie once. Just go with it. Invitations, please, the guard said. Oh, our parents have our invitations, but they're already inside, Connor said. Who are your parents? The guard asked snottily. Who are our parents? Connor yelled, causing a bigger scene than he had already. You mean you don't know who they are? All the guards and guests looked amongst one another. Connor, calm down, Alex said. What was he thinking? This man doesn't know who our parents are, Alex, Connor continued. I'll have you know that our parents invented wishing spells. How dare you show us any disrespect? Oh, Connor. Alex wanted to slap him. She looked apologetically at the people around them. They all scowled at the twins' direction, except for the guard with a thin beard. He was actually smirking at them with gentleness in his eyes. I'm afraid you two will have to leave now, the guard said, collecting invitations. Leave? You're making the heirs to the wishing well fortune leave? Connor exclaimed loudly enough for everyone to hear. Connor, just shut up, Alex whispered directly into his ear. Is there a problem? The guard with the thin beard asked as he approached the twins. Not at all, Alex said and began backing up, forcing Connor to move with her. They don't have an invitation, the other guard said. Oh, we were just leaving, Alex said. Sorry for the confusion. Nonsense, the guard with the thin beard said. I just saw your parents inside the palace. Why don't I take you to them? Are their parents inside the palace? Alex and Connor froze. You did? Connor said, and then quickly remembered he had to keep up with his own line. I mean, of course you did. He threw a dirty look at the other guard. Come with me. I will take you straight to your parents, the guard with the thin beard said. Before they knew it, Alex and Connor were being escorted into the palace. They were completely in over their heads. Did this guard know they were lying and he was escorting them directly to the dungeon? Or perhaps Connor's lie was truer than he thought and they were about to meet a couple that were definitely not their parents? Allow me to introduce myself, the guard said. I'm Sir Lambton, the head of the Queen's Royal Guard. Welcome to the palace. Thank you, Connor said. I'm Connor Wishington, and this is my sister, Alex. Where are you from, Mr. and Mrs. Wishington? Lambton asked. Upstate Northern Kingdom, Connor said. Even he looked surprised by the words coming out of his mouth. But our parents have a summer home in the south of the Sleeping Kingdom and a condo in Fairy Kingdom. Alex's eyes opened so wide she had to remind herself to blink. Ah, I see, Lambton said with a curious look. Would you like me to take your bags for you? No, that's quite all right, Alex said. We'll manage. Lambton led the twins down a long hallway behind all the other guests. There were many large portraits of past rulers on the walls, and a red carpet ran under their feet. Alex and Connor were all eyes. They had never been inside a royal palace before. There were so many shiny things to look at. Lambton seemed to be enjoying their excitement. He leaned between them and softly said, You're sneaking into the palace, aren't you? Is he onto them? Alex desperately looked to Connor, but he was out of lies for the night. Please don't throw us in the dungeon, Alex pleaded. We didn't mean any harm. Connor looked at his sister with a raised eyebrow. Did she mean no harm besides breaking into the palace and stealing the cherished item? Lambton chuckled. I've seen a lot of youngsters try to sneak into the royal ball before, but never have I been so entertained by an attempt, he said. So you aren't going to throw us in a cell and hang us upside down by our toenails? Connor asked. We stopped doing that ages ago, Lambton said. On the contrary, it would be my honor to show you two around. Really? Connor said. That would be lovely, Alex said, clapping her hands together. Thank you. At the end of the hall, Lambton led the twins through a pair of golden doors in the ballroom. At first, the sight was overwhelming. There were so many things to look at, and it was impossible to focus on any one thing long enough to comprehend what it was. There was so much movement and color. The biggest chandelier they'd ever seen, with thousands of candles, hung hung from the ceiling above an enormous dance floor. Hundreds of formally dressed men and women filled the space. Some mingled on the sides while others danced to the music played by a small orchestra in the corner. Everything from the archway to the accents on the walls was golden. A grand staircase descends in the back of the room, just behind two empty thrones. Connor knew it would only be a few seconds before Alex started crying. "It's so beautiful," Alex said with teary eyes. Is this where they had their ball where Cinderella and the prince met?" "Indeed," Lambton said. "I'll never forget it. I was just a simple guard back then. The prince was meeting all the young women in the kingdom in hopes of finding a bride. Cinderella was the last to arrive that night. She entered the room just as we are now, and everyone stopped to look at her." "How did she look?" Alex asked. "Magical," Lambton said with a smile, lost in his own memory. "She wore a long violet dress that sparkled as she walked. I remember hearing the soft taps of the glass slippers as she walked past." "What color dress does she wear in the Disney version? Is it lavender? Violet?" "It's baby blue, isn't it? Disney changes details. Remember, we've talked about that." They take a lot of fairy tales and kind of twist them to their own versions. We had a lesson on that. So a lot of the themes tend to be different. The life lessons, the themes can be different in the Disney versions versus the actual versions that were originally written. The original versions tend to be a lot darker. Didn't the teacher in this book teach a lesson on that too? I think she did. Hopefully mine wasn't like hers, right? Hopefully mine was nicer. It was love at first sight. The whole palace could feel it. Suddenly, a man blew a trumpet at the foot of the grand staircase. "Ladies and gentlemen," the man with the trumpet announced, "it is with great honor that I welcome you to the royal ball this evening. Now please give a warm welcome to the royal majesties, King Charming and Queen Cinderella." The guests cheered and burst into applause. The royal couple entered the ballroom, slowly making their way down the grand staircase. Alex grabbed onto Connor's arm. "Connor!" Alex gasped, "It's Cinderella! It's Cinderella!" Although the twins had only seen illustrations of her, Cinderella was more beautiful than they ever expected. Her hair was auburn. Do you know what color auburn is? It's kind of like a reddish brown color. Is that true in Cinderella? The Disney version? What color's her hair in that? Blonde, isn't it? Her auburn hair styled up behind a crystal tiara. She wore white gloves, and a long turquoise gown flowed down her, accentuating her pregnant belly. Cinderella's having a baby? That's exciting. Despite all the gold and glorious chandelier, her eyes and smile were the brightest things in the room. King Charming was the definition of dashing. He was every bit as handsome as any description ever written about him. He had a mesmerizing smile and thick wavy hair under a large golden crown. He could easily have been a movie star in the twins' world. The king and the queen took their seats on the throne, and the guard with the trumpet blew the opening notes of another announcement. "Let the ball begin," the guard of the trumpet proclaimed, and was greeted by another round of excited applause. The majority of the guests rushed to the dance floor. The orchestra began playing a fast-paced symphony. All the guests paired up and began waltzing around the room, each looking lovingly in the partner's eyes the entire time. The king and the queen remained seated. You could tell Cinderella wanted to join the dance, but her pregnancy was preventing her to do so. King Charming only had eyes for his wife. He was enjoying watching the dance more than the actual dance itself. At one point, each of the dancing men collected a shoe from their partners and circled them around before placing it back on their feet. A Cinderellian tribute, no doubt. Time flew by as the twins watched the ball. The unborn child that Cinderella was carrying must have been kicking from all the excitement. Cinderella appeared to be having some discomfort and had been rubbing her belly and shifting in her seat from time to time. She eventually whispered something into King Charming's ear. King Charming took his wife's hand and carefully helped her back up the grand staircase. The guard blew the trumpet again. "The queen is tired and wishes to rest, but she and the king welcome you to continue the celebration without their presence." The crowd happily obliged and continued their fun. "Would you like a tour of the palace?" Lambton asked the twins. "More than anything," Alex said. Lambton escorted the twins out the ballroom and down a hall similar to the ones they had first entered the palace through. It, too, was home to several portraits of past rulers and a long red carpet. "This palace was built over 500 years ago," Lambton told them as he walked. "It has been home to the Charming dynasty since then. This is a portrait of King Chester Charming, Cinderella's late father-in-law." So if it's his father-in-law, her father-in-law, whose dad is it? Yeah, Prince Charming's dad. Her husband's dad. He referred to the large painting of an old bearded man with a crown. He looked exactly like his son, but much older. "How many King Charmings have there been?" Connor asked. "We've lost count," Lambton said. "There are 3 currently. King Chester had 4 sons. Chance Charming, Chase Charming, Chandler Charming, and Charlie Charming." Lots of alliteration there, right? Do you guys remember what alliteration is? Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. Sally sells seashells by the seashore. Tongue twisters, right? They all start with the same letter or same sound. Like C's and K's sometimes make the same sounds. Chance Charming, Chase Charming, Chandler Charming, and Charlie Charming. Woo! You imagine like yelling their names when they're in trouble, all 4 of them? Each of the Charming brothers had his own portrait on the wall. "King Chance Charming is the oldest and is married to Queen Cinderella," Lambton said, and gestured to the portrait of the man they had seen in the ballroom. "King Chase Charming is the second oldest and is married to Queen Sleeping Beauty," Lambton continued. Chase looked exactly like his brother, except he was a bit taller and wore a goatee. "King Chandler Charming is the third oldest and is married to Queen Snow White," Lambton said. Chandler looked like his brothers, but had the longest hair of all of them. The last portrait in the hallway caught the twins' eyes the most. It was hung slightly away from the rest and depicted the youngest of the Charming brothers. He was young and had a big smile. A single candle was lit beside the portrait. It appeared to be a memorial of a sort. What's a memorial? We had that word, oh my gosh, our first story of the year. We talked about the Herman W. Block Memorial Library in Winn-Dixie. We talked about how memorials, like we have them to remember people or events. So what do you think that means about the youngest Charming prince? Maybe he's not living anymore. Typically that's why they light candles or things, right? As an honor and memorial to them. Max, baby, you have food right there. Hey, we're reading. You can come join Read Aloud or you can stop. He doesn't want to join. He said no thanks. "That's Prince Charlie, the 4th son of King Chester. He's a long-lost Charming prince," Lambton said. "He vanished one night, many years ago, and no one ever saw him again." He just vanished? That's sad, isn't it? "That's horrible," Alex said. Max, quit. His brothers led massive search parties throughout the kingdom, but they never found a trace of him," Lambton said sadly. "Hey! I don't know what his deal is tonight. You can't open the fridge. Bro. I don't know what he wants. Just to be a pest, maybe. I think he's got some cabin fever, too. He runs outside. He likes it when I take him out. Max, we are reading. I will deal with you in a minute, okay? Yeah, we're reading. Cats. All right. Fortunately, some good came out of the search. While on the road, Prince Chandler came across Snow White in her glass coffin, and Prince Chase discovered Sleeping Beauty asleep in her castle, and they both broke the spells that were put on them and were married. That's incredible, Alex said. So if Prince Charlie never went missing, Sleeping Beauty and Snow White would still be unconscious? That may be, Lambton said. And since his brothers took all the eligible princesses, Prince Chance had to put on the ball where he met Cinderella. Everything happens for a reason, I suppose. Alex and Connor couldn't stop staring at the portrait of Prince Charlie. There was a sad energy in this part of the hallway, and the twins were especially sensitive to it. The long-lost prince couldn't have been much older than them when he'd gone missing. Lambton clearly appreciated the twins' interest. Now, follow me. I have something very special I want to show you, Lambton said. What do you think he's going to show them? Something special. Lambton led the twins down another hallway, deeper into the palace. This part of the palace was completely vacant, and it made the twins more and more nervous as they walked. They had no idea where Lambton was taking them, and they were too timid to ask. What does it mean to be too timid? They're too timid to ask him where they're going. Yeah, timid's like a synonym for shy. Good. They rounded a corner, and at the end of another long hall was a pair of black double doors. There were 2 guards on either side of the door, and a large stone arch above them with a sign that read, Queen Cinderella's Royal Room of Display. What do you think could be in the Royal Room of Display that's Cinderella's? Alex and Connor looked at each other with light in their eyes. They had made it. Hello, Sir Lambton, one of the guards said. Good evening, Lambton said. He pushed open the doors and the twins followed him inside. They set their bags down and looked around the room. The display room was a wide chamber with white pillars and a sky blue tiled floor. The ceiling was domed and covered in golden stars. The room was illuminated by moonlight coming from a large window in the back that then reflected through a series of hanging mirrors. Several special objects were on display and placed on the top of short pillars and surrounded by thick glass cases. Brooms, buckets, and old raggedy dresses were put on show. Whose were those? Remember when Cinderella lived with the evil stepmother and evil stepsisters? A family of mice lived in a glass case and a miniature replica of the palace. The mice, remember them? In the very center of their room were Cinderella's glass slippers. They were beautiful and petite and made of pure crystal glass decorated with diamonds. What does petite mean? Her glasses were petite. Yeah, she had small little feet. Petite. Petite, or like dainty, we would call that. The twins could feel their hearts sink into the pits of their stomachs as soon as they saw them. They were so close. Those are beautiful, Alex said. The slippers had put her in a trance. I'm quite partial to them myself. A soft voice that didn't belong to Alex, Connor, or Lambton said. Who would be partial to the slippers? Sitting on the windowsill in the back of the room was Cinderella herself. They had been so astonished by the display room, they hadn't noticed her. Your Majesty, Lambton said, please forgive me. I didn't see you there. I was just giving some guests a tour of the palace. It's quite all right, Sir Lambton, Cinderella said, and walked across the chamber to greet them. I like to come here on occasion after long days to clear my head. Who might these 2 be? Alex and Connor couldn't speak. They were completely starstruck. This is Alex and Connor, Lambton told her. Pleasure to meet you, Cinderella said and held out her hand. We're big fans, Connor said, and shook her hand a little too hard. Alex couldn't move. You're like my hero, Alex said to her, and that's all she could manage to say. Thank you, sweetheart, Cinderella said. Welcome to my little room of memories. It's remarkable, Alex squealed. Would you like me to show you around? Cinderella asked. Alex couldn't move her limbs, but was able to nod. Cinderella began a small tour around them. Cinderella began a small tour and took them around their room to each of the items on display. These are the brooms and buckets I used to clean my stepmother's house every day, Cinderella said. They were my first dancing partners. I remember, whenever I was home alone, I used to dance with them around the house and pretend it was a big royal dance. Although, I must say, they weren't the best at conversation. Cinderella and Lantern laughed. Connor and Alex were still in shock that they were in her presence. They were standing next to Cinderella, and she had a sense of humor. Over here are my raggedy old clothes that my fairy godmother turned into the beautiful ball gown, Cinderella continued. They're not much to look at now, but whenever my fairy godmother visits us, they turn back into the beautiful ball gown she created for me. That's really cool, Connor said. These are my mice, Cinderella said, and showed the twins the miniature palace full of mice. She opened the latch and took a mouse out of the cage. She gently petted it, and it peacefully nestled in her hand. Are these the mice that transformed into the horses and coachmen for your carriage? Alex finally asked, finding her voice. The original mice passed away, but these are their children, and their children's children, Cinderella said. I look after them as a thank you. They have a horrible reputation, but mice are actually very gentle creatures. You just have to give them a chance. Cinderella put the mouse back in with the others and walked to the center of the room. And these, I believe, need no explanation, she said, and she brought the twins to the glass slippers. She removed the glass case entirely and took one of the glass slippers in her hand. Those couldn't have been comfortable, Connor said. They were surprisingly easy to move about in, Cinderella said. Did your feet ever get sweaty? Connor went on. That couldn't have looked really, Alex elbowed him in the ribs. Cinderella snickered. Would you like to hold one? Cinderella asked them. Alex nodded harder than she ever nodded before. Cinderella gently lifted one from the pillar and handed it to her. A magical feeling went through Alex. She was holding a piece of fairy tale history. Perhaps one of the most famous objects in all of fantasy time was in her hands. She couldn't help but get a bit emotional. Connor, on the other hand, kept thinking about ways to steal the slipper. Because remember, that's what they need to do, right? Alex looked up at her brother and knew what he was thinking by the intensity in his eyes. For a moment, they shared the same thought. Was it possible to take off with it? Connor was actually thinking it was possible to outrun Lambton and the other two guards outside the door. What was it like? Alex asked Cinderella. What was it like going from being a servant to being queen? What was it like to be saved from a horrible situation? Your life is literally, well, a Cinderella story. A sadness came to Cinderella's face. I never thought my life would change so drastically, so I always made the most of what I had, Cinderella said. I always laugh at the term Cinderella story because, if you ask me, it doesn't matter what life you're living. Life never has a solution. No matter how hard the struggles are that you leave behind, new struggles always take their place. People forget that I wasn't liked very much by the people of the charming kingdom when I first came to live at the palace, Cinderella said. Not too many people were thrilled with the idea of a servant girl becoming their queen. Many people called me the Pumpkin Princess or the Mouse Monarch. Do you hear that? Pumpkin Princess, Mouse Monarch, PPMM. Those are examples of what? Yeah, alliteration, good. When they first discovered the details of how I had came to the ball that night, I had to earn the kingdom's respect, and it wasn't easy. Being queen has some perks though too, right? Connor asked. No more scrubbing the floors or dancing with cleaning supplies or talking to mice? Meeting the man of my dreams and starting a family is the best thing that will ever happen to me," Cinderella said with a smile and rubbed her belly. "And that's what makes me the happiest and luckiest woman in the world. However, living a public life is a difficult thing to do, and even now, I still find it a bit overwhelming. No matter what you do, you can never please everyone, and that was the hardest lesson to learn. In fact, I'm still learning it." This was such a revelation to Alex. Suddenly, the fairy tale world seemed even more real than it had before. She never thought she could respect Cinderella more than she already did, but she had never thought about the story from her point of view. Alex set the glass slipper back beside the other one. At first, Connor shot her a look, like, "What are you doing? We have to steal that." But they both knew they couldn't take it. At least, not tonight. After all the kindness they had been shown. "After all the magical things that have happened in my life, this is my most prized possession," Cinderella said, and her hands were still on her pregnant stomach. "She's going to be here any day now." "How do you know it's a girl?" Alex asked. "Mother's intuition," Cinderella said. "She never sits still when she hears music, so she must have my taste and her father's energy." One of the guards from the hallway burst into the display room. "Your Majesty, Sir Lambton, your presence has been requested in the ballroom," the guard said very seriously. Something was wrong. "What's the matter?" Sir Lambton said. "Soldiers from the Northern Kingdom. They come with a message for the king and the queen," he said. Lambton handed the twins their bags, and before they knew it, the twins were following him, Cinderella and the other guards, out of the display room and down the hallway toward the ballroom. "Now how are we going to get a hold of the glass slippers?" Connor whispered to Alex. "We'll have to collect all of the other items first and then come back for it," Alex said. "It should be easier to explain why we need it if we have the other items. We've already established a trusting relationship with them." "I knew I should have grabbed it when I had the chance," Connor said. They re-entered the ballroom. All of the guests were still, and the orchestra was dead silent. Cinderella reunited with her husband at the thrones. Dozens of the same soldiers dressed in silver armor, whom Alex and Connor had seen on their first day in the Lane of Stories, were now spread throughout the ballroom. "Forgive our intrusion, your Majesty. My name is Sir Grant. I am head of Snow White's royal guard. We have some news regarding the evil queen," the leader of the soldiers said. "What is it?" King Charming said. Everyone in the room could tell it was not good news by his tone. You could have cut the tension and worry in the air with a knife. What type of figurative language is that? You could have cut the attention and worry in the air with a knife. Doesn't literally mean what it says. Good, it's an idiom. "Last night, a magic mirror that belonged to the evil queen was stolen from her former chambers," Sir Grant said. "The evil queen is still very much at large, and that she has her former mirrors makes her a much greater threat to all of us. We are asking, pleading, if anyone in the Charming Kingdom knows anything about the evil queen, where the evil queen is hiding, that they please let us know immediately." Snow White's soldiers filled the ballroom. King Charming and Cinderella embraced each other, worried both for themselves and for what the news meant for their kingdom. "It was lovely to meet you, children." Oh, wrong character, sorry. "It was lovely to meet you, children, but I must go," Lambton said to them. He patted their soldiers and then headed out after the soldiers. Many of the guests began leaving as well. Connor and Alex followed them out, down the entrance steps, away from the palace. "This whole evil queen's situation is starting to concern me," Alex said. "I know, but it's not really our problem," Connor said. "We'll be long gone before anything else happens." "I suppose so," Alex said. "Is the evil queen their problem? What does she want?" The wishing spell. "Where are we off to now?" Connor asked. "The Little Red Riding Hood Kingdom is north of here," Alex said. "I say that's the best direction to head. I hope we have better luck getting a hold of Red Riding Hood's basket." "We'd better not chicken out this time," Connor said. "Gosh, we were so close," He clenched a tight fist. We couldn't just take it. Not without permission, Alex said. It wouldn't have felt right. I'm so tired of being a good person, Connor said. Despite having failed to collect the glass slipper and the abrupt end to the evening, the twins had a pretty fantastic night. It wasn't every day that they got to have such an intimate conversation with one of the most famous women in history. Luckily for the twins, the twins found a night driver transporting a cart full of pears to the village in the northern part of the charming kingdom. They convinced him to let them ride in the back of his carriage in exchange for a few gold coins. It would only be a few miles' walk to Red Riding Hood Kingdom from there. Connor fell asleep as soon as they climbed aboard. Alex couldn't sleep, so she decided to read through the journal again. She reached in her bag and was astounded to discover what was inside of it. What do you think is inside of there? Connor? Alex gasped. Connor jumped back to consciousness. What is it? He said. He looked over and saw something very shiny in his sister's hand. His eyes were still a little blurry from sleeping, and he had to let them adjust before realizing what it was. A glass slipper? Connor exclaimed, and Alex gestured for him to keep quiet so the driver wouldn't hear them. How in the world did we get it? Did you steal it? I thought it was you, Alex's mouth was so wide it could have fit in a dozen pears inside of it. No, it wasn't me, I swear. Do you think Lambton or Cinderella put it in your bag? Connor asked. Do you think one of them knew we needed it? I have no idea, Alex said. She couldn't believe she was actually holding on to one of Cinderella's glass slippers. They were both completely dumbfounded. Looks like our trip to the charming kingdom wasn't a waste of time after all, Connor said. And that's the end of chapter 9. Chapter 10, we will be in the Red Riding Hood Kingdom. All right, guys. This book's getting good, isn't it? I can't wait to read with you tomorrow. I love you. Good night.